The United States is facing the most serious democratic crisis of the modern era. Attacks on the independence of the judiciary, efforts to weaken federal agencies, increasing pressure on universities and the media, aggressive use of executive authority, and a political culture that has become saturated with anger, conspiracy theories, and ideological hostility. One might describe this loss of American democracy as apocalyptic. Authoritarianism, democratic backsliding, and constitutional norms are systematically being dismantled. Yet if last night's primary elections were supposed to provide evidence of a nation in revolt, the results offered little sign of it. Across the country, voters largely behaved as they often do during primary elections. Familiar political dynamics prevailed. Democrats argued amongst themselves about ideology and strategy. Republicans continued to rally around candidates aligned with Trump. Competitive races emerged in California, New Jersey, Iowa, and elsewhere. But there was little indication of an electorate mobilized by a sense of democratic emergency.
Spencer Pratt, do you see yourself in him at all? A former reality TV star?
No, I'd like to see him do well. He's a character. I don't know him. I assume he probably supports me. Does he support me?
I think so.
I think so, yeah. I heard he does. I heard he's a big MAGA person. He's doing well. I don't know. If you have a rigged vote out there, that's the problem. The votes are rigged. You have a really rigged vote in California. You have all the mail-in ballots, everything else. Very hard to win because the elections are very dishonest.
For those who believe America's institutions are under unprecedented threat, the disconnect is striking. If the country is truly approaching a constitutional crossroads, why does so much of the electorate appear to be treating politics as usual? The answer may begin with a simple reality of democratic life. Regular citizens do not experience political crises in the same way that activists, journalists, and political professionals do. While commentators debate the future of democracy, many voters remain preoccupied with the concerns that have shaped American elections for generations. They worry about housing costs, healthcare, wages, inflation, crime, schools, and whether they'll be better off next year than they are today. Even among voters who dislike Trump, fears about democratic institutions often compete with more immediate concerns. Political scientists have long observed that abstract threats tend to motivate people less than tangible economic pressures. A warning about constitutional erosion may sound urgent to those who follow politics closely, but it can feel distant compared with rising rents or stagnant paychecks. The disassociation, the misunderstanding that these two issues are intrinsically linked. There's also the possibility that years of constant political alarm have produced a kind of national exhaustion. Since 2016, Americans have been told repeatedly that each election represents an existential struggle for the future of the republic. Every scandal has been described as unprecedented. Every controversy has been framed as an historic turning point. Over time, even genuinely alarming developments can begin to lose their capacity to shock. When everything is presented as a crisis, voters eventually stop responding as though they are living through one. That may help explain why Tuesday's results appeared less like a referendum on democratic survival and more like a conventional midterm primary season. Democrats focused on finding candidates capable of winning competitive districts. Republicans largely remained loyal to Trump despite signs of declining approval ratings. The electoral map, candidate quality, fundraising, and local issues often appeared more influential than sweeping questions about the future of American democracy, the survival of the American experiment, and how America looks on the world stage. For critics of the administration, that should be a sobering realization. Democratic systems rarely collapse because a majority of citizens consciously choose authoritarianism. More often, democratic erosion occurs gradually through public indifference, normalization, and the belief that institutions will somehow protect themselves. History offers numerous examples of societies that drifted into less democratic forms of government, not because voters demanded autocracy, but because they underestimated the significance of political changes occurring around them. Citizens adapted, institutions weakened incrementally. Each individual development seemed manageable until the cumulative effect became impossible to ignore. Whether the United States is approaching such a moment remains fiercely debated. What is undeniable, though, is that many Americans who warn of democratic decline have struggled to translate these concerns into sustained electoral energy. The primaries suggested an electorate that remains engaged in partisan politics, but not necessarily galvanized by broader constitutional questions. That may reflect skepticism, it may reflect fatigue, it may simply reflect the tendency of voters to prioritize immediate concerns over institutional ones. Whatever the explanation, the result is the same. The sense of urgency expressed by many political observers has yet to produce a corresponding sense of urgency among large segments of the electorate. If Americans genuinely believe democratic institutions are under threat, that guardrails have collapsed, elections remain the most direct mechanism for expressing that concern. Voting is how citizens communicate priority to those in power. It's how they reward leaders, punish failures, and signal the direction they want the country to take. When turnout is low, engagement is limited, or voters appear disengaged from the issues that commentators describe as existential. The message received by Washington is often not outrage, but acquiescence. Tuesday's primaries therefore posed an uncomfortable question. If democracy is truly at stake, why did so many races feel routine? Why was there so little evidence of a public uprising against the forces that we have constantly described as dangerous? Perhaps the answer is that many voters do not share the diagnosis. Perhaps they do, but remain unconvinced that elections can solve the problem. Or perhaps Americans, like citizens in many democracies before them, simply assume that the guardrails of their political system are stronger than they actually are. American exceptionalism? Call it what you will. Whatever the explanation, the contrast between the reality of the crisis and the reality of the primary results could not have been clearer. A political class, consumed by warnings of democratic decline, encountered an electorate that, for the most part, behaved as though the country was participating in just another ordinary election season. Whether that reflects confidence, complacency, or simple exhaustion may prove one of the defining political questions of 2026 and the beginning of the end of the American experiment. I'm Anthony Davis. You can find me on the 5 Minute News YouTube channel and podcast, on Wednesdays co-hosting Uncovered, on Global AF, on Legal AF, and on Sundays on The Weekend Show with MeidasTouch.
Want to stay plugged in? Become a subscriber to our Substack at MeidasPlus.com. You'll get daily recaps from Ron Filipkowski, ad-free episodes of our podcast, and more exclusive content only available at MeidasPlus.com.